Good evening. I'd like to talk to you for a moment, if I can, about one of the most haunted buildings on the eastern seaboard, the Peyton Randolph House. In the last 306 years, there have been over 24 deaths within the walls of this house. Many say that these spirits continue to haunt the house to this day. Now, the house was built in 1715, purchased in 1721 by Sir John Randolph, who incidentally happens to be the only colonial ever to receive knighthood. He ended up passing the house down to his son, Peyton Randolph, who, as you may or may not know, is considered one of our founding fathers. He was the president of the First and Second Continental Congress, as well as he was a cousin to Thomas Jefferson. So things went fine in this house for years until the Revolutionary War happened. During the Revolutionary War, Lord Dunmore, the governor of Williamsburg, told all slaves that if they left their masters and came and fought for the English, that they would receive their freedom as recompense. Well, England ended up not winning the war, and slaves were returned to their masters. Now, Betty Randolph, the wife of Peyton Randolph, was known to be particularly cruel to her slaves, specifically her personal slave, a woman they called Eve. When Betty Randolph passed away, Eve was sold to another family, forever being separated from her son. And many people say that this is when the bad things truly started happening. Over the next years, there were two men who got into a quarrel and ended up shooting each other and both dying. There was a young girl who was playing by a second-story window and fell to her death. There was a young boy climbing a tree out front years later who also fell to his death. The Marquis de Lafayette once stayed in the property and said that it was unsettling, that he could not sleep, that there were sounds, there were noises, there were feelings. To put it in the parlance of our times, 1 star, do not recommend. In the 1960s, a college student from the College of William and Mary stayed there and said the entire time he could feel a tugging on his arm, like somebody was grabbing at his shirt sleeves. He ended up leaving in the middle of the night and refused to even come back for his stuff. There was a Civil War soldier who suddenly took ill and died in the house. So, there's been lots of hinky circumstances, lots of deaths. A security guard once was walking through the house, in the basement, I believe, and said that it was as if something had grabbed his ankles and he could not move, and he just heard screaming and roaring through the house. Scared him, of course. Wouldn't you? And another incident that I think is kind of awesome. A fire alarm went off. And when they finally got into the room where the fire alarm was going off, there was a fire extinguisher sitting in the middle of the room, and it expelled all of its flame retardant everywhere. There was powder all over. No footprints, no marks, no signs that anybody had been in there. And when they lifted the fire extinguisher, the floor underneath it was clean. So it appears as if the fire extinguisher had moved itself to the middle of the room, expelled its entire load of fire retardant all on its own. So there's a few theories as to why this house is so haunted. Some say that it was cursed by the slave Eve. Some think it's because this house, like many around it, were built over native burial grounds. They did find the remains of 2 natives on the property I believe in the 1940s. So, there's just a lot going on with it. In one of our tours there, 6 people brought EMF readers. Every single one of them, the battery drained itself. It died. There's a talking box, a spirit box, that allows spirits to communicate with people, and the only thing it's ever said, and it's said this several times, is get out. Get off this property. Be gone. So, how do you think the house is haunted? How many spirits do you think are there?